Today we're going to talk about teams and church planting. Elmer Towns and Douglas Porter made this statement. Churches planted by an effective ministry team tend to be stronger and their future tends to be more secure. Now, there's several reasons for this, and we'll talk about those in just a few moments. But it's not the only way to plant a church. It is a good way. It is a very effective way, and there are a lot of benefits to it. But there are some downsides too, so we're going to talk about those. The strength of a team, first of all, is shared leadership. Okay? You have shared leadership if you remember the apostolic example. They were sent out. Jesus first sent out the 12, then he sent out the 70, then Paul and Barnabas were sent out as a team. And by having that team, you have shared leadership. You have added wisdom. You've heard 2 heads are better than 1. In the mouth of many counselors, there's wisdom. So those are some benefits to shared leadership. Also with shared leadership, it keeps the weight of church planting task off the shoulders of just one person. So it tends to help. You have someone you can bounce out ideas over. It also has an element of accountability. Teamwork fosters accountability. When church planters work side by side, it is easier for them to hold each other accountable regarding their walk with the Lord, their relationships with their spouse, their children, their faithfulness to the church planting task. It helps them to be held accountable in all aspects of their life. So that's a good thing to keep from making a poor example, because the people in the community are going to be watching the church planters. A third strength is you have that built-in encouragement. Church planting can be extremely discouraging, and a team will create a healthy atmosphere for support, especially during those difficult days when everything seems to be going against you. For example, the COVID pandemic, when things were shut down and in many countries people weren't allowed to gather together. That's a discouraging time for a church planter on a field, away from home and friends, and so that's really a good thing. Diversity. A team makes room for a diversity of gifts and talents. Instead of one person trying to accomplish all the necessary tasks, a team allows a variety of people to help. Their gifts and their talents will help you accomplish the task. By doing that, it also helps to be a more well-rounded church plant. Let me explain. The people are going to be watching the church planter. If there's only one person, then they think every leader has to be exactly like that one planter. But if you have a team and they see a diversity of gifts and a diversity of personality, then they begin to see that there's room for them and their giftedness on a church planting team. Another thing is there's strength in numbers. Okay? Church planting can be a very lonely ministry. A team provides support for the journey and protection against the opposition from physical and spiritual. So there's safety in numbers. A functional body is another strength. In situations where church planters are miles away from other churches. They can fellowship and worship with the team, and the team temporarily will act like a church. You will have fellowship together, you can worship together, you can pray together, you have mutual edification together. So a team gives you that little microcosm of a church. You can have your families with you, and another benefit of that, a functional body of Christ, is the people begin to see modeled before them getting together for worship, getting together for prayer, getting together for mutual edification. So it all works out very well in that respect. The other thing is pastoral care. Greg Livingston noted that a healthy church planting team offers pastoral care to itself so that each member will remain fit for serving God. Each team member is looking after the welfare of others. If one member of the team is hurting, then the whole team hurts. So you kind of have that built-in pastoral care when you have a team. Another strength is it is a training ground. Livingston went on to say that a team can provide opportunities for new members to grow as church planters. By allowing for such flexibility, the team serves as a place for equipping and multiplying new church planters. In other words, as they begin to see what y'all are doing as a team, they grow and they begin to see, hey, I can do this. I can be a part of that. And when a new team is sent out to plant another church, they've already had some training because they have observed what the team has been doing. It's a faster evangelistic growth potential is another strength. And simply put, if there's only one church planter, and if he is only winning one person a day to the Lord, that's great for a church planter. But what if you had 5 team members, and those 5 team members each won one person to the Lord a day? Instead of having one new believer a day, suddenly you have 5 new believers a day. So you can see the math that has a faster evangelistic growth potential. Another strength is wisdom in numbers. Wise decision making for day-to-day activities are best accomplished by a group close to the ministry context. Several church planters working together can provide the counsel needed for significant atypical decisions that periodically arise on the mission field. Instead of one person making a quick decision, only seeing the things that they see, sometimes that can be the wrong decision. But if you have a team, then they all see things a little bit differently, and they can help you make a better decision because they will see things differently than you do, and you'll have 5 different viewpoints rather than just one. So there's wisdom in numbers. And as I've already alluded to, another strength is it's a model of church for new believers. And it's interesting that they will observe you and watch you, and they will know how to function as they see, as they begin to worship with you, as your team gathers for worship with the new congregation. The new congregation looks around and sees that variety of participation, and it begins to be a model for them. Now, using a church team is a good idea, but there are some limitations. First of all, the length of time to make decisions. While it is a strength to have more insight, more people participating, it can also lengthen the time that a decision is made. You've got to coordinate schedules. You've got to be able to arrange the meeting. You've got to be able to discuss it. Then if you're going to pray about it, then you have to have time to pray about it and then meet back together and discuss it. So you can't just make a hasty decision. So sometimes those decisions are prolonged. Beloved, I've done it both ways. There have been times on the mission field where I was alone and I had to make a decision. And sometimes I made the right decision. Sometimes I could have made a better decision. And, so you have to understand the length of time to make a decision. It could be a limitation. The second one is the inevitability of conflict. You are going to have conflict. You can mark it down. It's certain. You will have a conflict over something. Even Paul and Barnabas were not immune. Barnabas argued over John Mark so sharply that they parted ways for the sake of the kingdom. So, I don't care how spiritual you are, there's still going to come those points of conflict. It may be arguing over the strategy or the best way to spend the money or where you need to go next. But there's going to be that situation that you're going to argue over. The conflict is inevitable. So you have to be able to deal with that because it will come with a team. Now, a third limitation is the potential to become inwardly focused. The team needs to stay focused on the task at hand. Otherwise, the church planting team may become more focused on themselves, especially in an area that is very hard, where the people are not as receptive. The team may settle for enjoying life together and building up one another, and in essence, not reach out as much. So that's a difficult thing. Now, let's talk about your team members. Now, Payne calls it the Barnabas factor, and I like that. If you're going to look to build a team to go on a church planting team, the Barnabas factor, these 8 qualities need to be present. That they walk with the Lord. You've got to see that walk with the Lord. You got to know that they are committed and faithful and walking with the Lord. Now, as I talk about these Barnabas factors, and I'm going to share with you the importance in a few moments, and they're all important. He maintains an outstanding character. That's with the Christian community and the outside world. That their character is impeccable. He already or she already needs to be serving the local church. It can't be somebody who says, oh, well, I've been training to go to the field. Once I get to the field, then I'll start serving in the local church. No, they need to be actively serving now, because there's certain things in ministry you can only learn by doing it. They need to be faithful to the call and remain faithful to the call, whatever happens. And stuff is going to happen in life. But they got to be able to remain faithful to what God's called them to do. They also need to be a personal soul winner. They need to share the gospel regularly with other people. So there's no substitute for that. You don't want a church planter who is afraid or doesn't know how to share his faith. It's paramount. I was in Africa. I was in the Moyo district in a place called Lufori, and we were doing medical missions, and I saw this lady who had, well, she was crippled. She was crawling, and she had suffered from polio all of her life. And anyway, as people were standing in line, because she crawled on her hands and her knees, she was having difficulty in line. And as she was about to give up, she just kind of sat in the dirt, and I just went over and sat down in the dirt with her and began to share with her Christ. You got to have a church planter who is not afraid to strike up that conversation. Barnabas factor, another one is raises up leaders. You need to see that that person has been pouring their life into someone else in an attempt to raise them up, to encourage them, to mentor them to be leaders. Barnabas means son of encouragement. So they need to encourage others, not only with their speech, but with their actions. And they need to be able to respond appropriately to conflict. Now, I'm going to say some things that are going to seem harsh, but they're probably some of the most important things you need to understand about a team. I have seen mission organizations who are so desperate to have people go that they'll take almost anyone. That always causes problems on the field. Always. If they don't have these Barnabas factors, then they don't need to go to the field. Because if they are selfish or prideful or arrogant, or they're self-serving and not an encourager, they're going to be more work than they're worth. I know that sounds harsh. You say, well, what about John Mark? Well, that's exactly why Paul didn't want to take a chance on John Mark again. Paul didn't have the patience for John Mark. Barnabas did. Now, if you're sending a team out, you want to make sure you have as many Barnabases as possible. If someone wants to come on a short-term trip who may have potential, that's fine. Encourage them, let them see the work, but do not send them out long-term until they possess these Barnabas qualities. Now, Payne does a very good job on the next section and the next issue, and that's a covenant of team understanding. Okay? Covenant of team understanding. Before the team is sent out, you need to sit down and come up with some form of covenant of team understanding, so everyone knows what is expected, what the goals are, how they're going to proceed, where they're going. They need to understand. And on page 245 and 246, you will find a lot of great questions that need to be answered. For example, summarize briefly in one or two sentences where you're going, what is your specific target people group, socioeconomic segment, whatever. Are there any non-negotiables in your strategy? What are some of the ways that you'll be able to get employment for your team members in case you're going to do tent making? Who makes lifestyle decisions? Where to live? Apartment, house, single families, or a team? What does a person have to agree to before he or she leaves for the field? How are decisions made? How is conflict resolved? What if someone determines that he or she should not be there after arriving? What skills are expected of someone joining the team? How does a person really know that he or she is ready to go? All these things you need to work out before you go. A team is a very effective way to plant churches, but there's a lot of preparation that goes into it to make sure you have the right team.